Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the stream. Great to see you here. We'll have people joining us from lots of different social media channels today for the next installment of the Mautic Project Lead office hours. So this is something we're doing on roughly a fortnightly basis, having speakers join me to talk about something that's happening in Mautic or a new feature or topics that might come up that people want to know more about. And the format is a half-hour fireside chat with a speaker, followed by a half an hour of open floor Zoom meeting where anyone can join. You can ask questions, you can follow up with the speaker from the talk, or you can bring anything that you'd like to chat about Mautic. And the link for the Zoom call can be found at community.mautic.org underneath the meetings section. And you'll also find there the links to all of the other streaming channels. So let's get started. My name's Ruth Cheesley, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm project lead for Mautic. Today, I'm dialing in from Ipswich in Suffolk, which was recently made famous by a certain Mr. Ed Sheeran visiting and playing big concerts here in our town. And today, we're going to be talking about something which is really important when it comes to marketing, and that is privacy. And it's something that Mautic's always had a head start on due to the fact that you can self-host and hence have full control over your customer data. So joining me today on the stage is Dirk Spannaus from 20Zen. Let me just bring him onto the stream. So
Hello.
Great to have you joining us today, Dirk. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. So Dirk runs an agency that's worked with Mautic for about 10 years. So I'm really, really pleased that you were able to join us. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and about how you're involved with Mautic?
Yes. Thank you for inviting me to this talk today. Yeah, we're a long-time user of Mautic because when we started like over 10 years ago as a startup, we knew that marketing is kind of resource intensive and that especially a startup always needs to find ways on working more efficiently with existing resources. So marketing automation definitely came into play. And the other thing a startup has is limited funds. So open source is always very welcomed, and I would say that Mautic is something like the democratization of marketing automation. It was unaffordable many years ago, but with Mautic now, also small and medium-sized companies can have an easy entry into this topic.
Yeah, that's great. And so you have a particular interest in privacy when it comes to working with Mautic, and that's kind of how we've connected through this project. So do you want to say a little bit more about what that interest is and kind of where that comes from?
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, we are talking about marketing automation. What it exactly is communication automation, and it does not stop with marketing. So when we, for instance, with our own processes came across things like a recruitment process, we know that this is also communication, a lot of quick responses, auto responses. And of course, we also want to do this with a marketing automation tool. And then we started to see that there are higher requirements in terms of privacy. If you're talking about employees and recruitment processes, for instance, but also our clients who are mainly in small and medium-sized companies in Germany have high demands on privacy, mostly coming through the regulation, GDPR and stuff, but also because more and more clients see data privacy as an important feature also to build up trust with their clients. So when clients talk to us about marketing automation, they immediately also appreciated the way that they can run Mautic on own servers with their own suppliers, with their own service providers. And this is something that sets Mautic also apart. So privacy is not only something that came up from own processes, but also clients demanded. Right?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot actually. And we're seeing now in the industry, particularly driven by Europe, but increasingly happening worldwide with the political situation and with everything going on in the world right now, are all increasing interest and focus on privacy first marketing. So can you tell me a bit more about what that means and what as a marketer and what that means as a user, like a person who is the customer of that business?
Yeah, I think there are several dimensions. A friend of mine is working for an NGO. So they have specific target groups and contacts that they have additional requirements in terms of security. Not only just for outside, of course, if you're an NGO caring about people that are under security threats, for instance, not only there, privacy is very important, but and this is not only in terms of outside privacy, but also inside. This means you also inside need to make sure that only people who have a need to know see data and see contact data, for instance, as in every CRM, for instance. So this means also when you talk about campaigns or contacts within running a marketing automation system, you need to make sure that only people see the data that are really required to see it, not everyone who has access to the system. So that's one thing. The other thing is also that came up in a discussion before when we announced the talk today, that marketing companies should also for a moment step aside and not think about what do I want to know about my client, but also in the shoes of their clients and the prospects, what are they willing to share with the company to get a better service? So then people would be willingly to share even more data. For instance, when you're talking about marketing automation, it makes a difference if in a campaign is targeting a CEO of a company, for instance, somebody who runs a business who has a different interest of your B2B topic, for instance, than the financial controller or the line of business. They all have different information needs. And then they're almost likely also willingly to share what type of group they are, what type of function they have, if they get better information due to that. On the other hand, marketing will have a harder time because that's also partly to blame for the current situation that marketing was over the borders or over the limits in trying to get as much data as they could, right, in the past. So every one of us probably has experienced some excessive marketing, and are more reluctant to give out data. So this is something about trust that we need to earn back, so that people understand they are capturing the data and I know why. So that's the zero-party data. People are willing to share with you why they are interested, what industry they are, and what role they play. And it's not like third-party data where people buy data from brokers and do so-called outbound campaigns, or what do they call it, cold mails, which is just another word for spam, right?
Yeah, indeed. So you mentioned that third-party data and zero-party data, and there's also first-party data. So for the uninitiated mere mortals who don't maybe exist in the world that we exist in, could you give like a really brief overview of like what those things mean, and particularly like what that actually means for privacy, so that people get more of a sense of what we're talking about here?
Yes. I mean, the third-party data obviously is data from data brokers, for instance, people who buy contact data, people who buy information, insights into contact data, and use it for marketing. People are then surprised on why they are targeted, for instance, and with what information. First-party data is something that I collect by interacting with the client. If I, for instance, track on my website which pages they are visiting, so I know which they might be interested in, which is a good indication, which can make campaigns better. And the zero party is really data that the client gives me about himself. And this could be done, for instance, with preference centers, where people can also correct data that I have for them. For instance, no, I'm not interested into business. I'm more interested into functionality, technical data. So they can correct data, and they could also change, update their names, for instance, or change their email address. This is something is zero-party data. So this is more like an interaction and driven by the contact itself.
Thanks. That's really helpful. I find sometimes in marketing, all these words get thrown around, but nobody actually explains kind of what they mean. So maybe we should write a blog post on that in the future. But so where is Mautic when it comes to privacy? So I know that we still have some work to do in terms of becoming fully privacy respecting. And you've been helping me work on the privacy project, which is something we're developing to help us really refine and improve Mautic from the perspective of privacy. So giving our users the ability to run in full privacy mode with no tracking at all on this enabled in Mautic, and then having the option to turn on only the tracking that they need, for example, or turn on the ability for a user to have access, like you were saying earlier, only to the contact segments and things that they need to see, or a group of people, for example, instead of having full access to everything in Mautic, which might actually not be great in some settings. So what are your experiences with working with Mautic in a highly regulated environment in Europe? Because you're based, whereabouts are you based again? Germany, isn't it?
In Germany, in Dresden, exactly, in Munich, we are present. But yes, and I think, I'm not sure, but Germany seems to be one of the most demanding countries in terms of privacy. We take it serious.
So what are you most excited about us improving? Like what thing in this privacy project just like really got you excited?
Exactly. The thing is that also clients are in discussions and have demands and request things like they want to be, of course, GDPR compliant because it's the law, right? And they do not want to be in trouble with their the clients and with other people who may force them. Also, then so that's kind of a bit of also balancing of interest. On the other hand, they want also to have accurate data. So and they want to have campaigns that are efficient. So for us, this privacy thing is not only a technical issue. It's also kind of balancing the different needs of the different stakeholders in that game. So we have client, you have their prospects, and your service provider, and then you need to find a way that balances all of that. So you get good data out of the campaigns, that they are working, that they are efficiently. On the other hand, that we are GDPR compliant. And when we worked with the clients, we always made sure that Mautic is as most as possible GDPR compliant. And this means there are really some functions that are already implemented that help a lot. First thing is the self-hosting, right? This is something that people appreciate. Even if there is the cloud and the software as a service, there is still a large part of clients that prefer to run their own data center, also with help. And maybe there's also a bit a shift at these times where digital sovereignty is something that's getting more and more important, especially as you sometimes can trust some of the software as a service companies. You may have seen it with LinkedIn, that the WeTransfer thing that came up, where suddenly WeTransfer said, okay, we want to use all your data to feed our artificial intelligence models with it. I think it's not, that's what they legally wanted to have allowed to, even if they may be not planning it. It seems like every legal department of those SaaS companies tries to get as much as possible allowance currently. So this gives a lot of backlash, I think is the name. And people think about is cloud, I mean, is software as a service, software running under third-party control, really the only way to go?
Yeah, because that's really problematic, isn't it? Like if you've signed on and you're like, this is the tool I want to use, this is a really great company, and you're really embedded, and then they make a change to their terms and conditions that goes against your privacy values. Often they do it with no notice, isn't it? So you're suddenly like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We need to change providers. And with proprietary tools, that's so difficult, which is why digital sovereignty is so important.
Especially as even if we have data portability, for instance, we can export contact data, for instance. Maybe we can also export history data, but you will build a lot of, or you will spend a lot of effort in building campaigns, for instance. And I doubt that the campaign is portable between different systems at those days. I mean, we are working on being portable between different instances, and therefore this is a big thing. Then also the other thing is GDPR. We have these GDPR cleanup jobs in the cron jobs running. This is a thing that so we can make sure that Mautic is not collecting data all the time and clogs up the database, because there's also a legal thing that you should not save data more than you need it. I mean, if somebody's inactive for 365 days, for instance, then you can also delete them from the database, right? So there are and also like forms in kiosk mode that do not track. We have also basic roles within the system, also preference center to update own data. So Mautic is a large way, has made a large way already, and is also mentioned as a positive example in marketing automation in terms of data privacy. But on the other hand, we have also seen things that we manually need to adjust.
Yes, the good old gravatar.
Exactly, yeah. So
yeah.
we hack core files currently. I mean, of course, it's a patch currently. Everybody can use it, but it would, of course, be nice to have just a switch in the system where we can switch it on off. So this is something also that you are working on in your proposal to improve Mautic even more, so we get the resources to get this done, right?
Yeah, and you were talking earlier before we came on the stage about using the API to like pull stats completely anonymously. Like, so if you just wanted to get the numbers, but you don't want to know anything about the contacts, which is actually a really sensible way of doing things if you're working with the data. Tell us a bit more about that and a bit more about what the challenges are.
Yeah. So besides to make Mautic as it is compliant to run, with some hacks, with some manual work, with not using certain functions from Mautic, but using it from your website, for instance. We also think in the future that we can provide value-added services like an automatic monitoring of an instance. And we can see, for instance, how many form submits, how many contacts have grown over the time. And if I do this as a third-party service provider, it would make our clients feel much more confident if they know they only can pull the statistics data, but they cannot pull any contacts data. So it would, for instance, be nice if our API had the way to switch to no personal identifiable data, PID, only let them get numbers like how many contacts, how many active contacts, how many inactive, how many non-human interaction clicks, for instance, so that we can really make sense out of this data. And we say we do not want to see any of your contact data. I mean, very often when we work directly together with clients, of course, we have the contracts that allow us to see their contact data, right? But if, for instance, somebody wants to build a monitoring tool for Mautic with a lot of intelligence, then we are in the same situation. We just don't want to see this personal data. And this could be something that can be enhanced, right?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, you know, people often ask me, like, how many active instances are there out in the world? And the true answer is actually we don't know that because we don't have that kind of tracking at all. Like when you install Mautic, there's some telemetry that when you update Mautic, we'll call back to our update server and just tell us like your operating system and your PHP version, database version and Mautic version. But beyond that, we don't actually have any tracking. But if there was the ability to just send anonymous statistics that don't include contact data, that could also benefit the Mautic project, potentially.
Yeah.
You know, we could get a sense of what size, what scale are people using Mautic at without there being any risk of that data being shared. It's not something that's kind of on the radar now, but I do think, like thinking out loud, that could be really helpful for us to know more about Mautic instances out there.
I mean, on one hand, we say, okay, data is important to get new insights, right? On the other hand, we also have this principle of data minimization, that we only collect data that we really work on. That's something every marketer always needs to think about. Do I really need to track that data? Do I really work with that? But things like this, how many people using it, also what releases, and so would be important for somebody who wants to drive the development of Mautic, right? And for service providers, it's good to give their clients more insights into their data and give recommendations on how they can improve. for instance, we can see if a campaign works or does not work as a monitoring, right? So there are, this is what I mentioned with balancing the interests to make it make it GDPR compliant, but also to allow new ways of analyzing data from Mautic, right?
Yeah. So from your perspective, what do you see as like coming up on the horizon that Mautic needs to kind of get ahead of the curve on?
Yeah, I mean, we are currently working with these proposals that we say, okay, there are certain funds that support data privacy improvements. And I think when we talk to the community, what help could be needed. So everybody can join and help, for instance, to make sure that this Gravatar hack not just is a hack, but becomes a button that can be in the preference switched on, switched off, for instance. But also joining the working groups. I don't know if everybody who's watching the stream knows that they could be a member of the Mautic community and contribute to that. So we are also talking about to our clients that open source is free, right? But it's not like free of cost. There's a lot of time involved. People who help open source to achieve. That was something we benefited in the past, and so there's also time to give back. And this can be time. This can be help in the community. This can be contributions. So I think that's something people can help with. In the German community, we worked out the initial concept on what needs to be done with Mautic, and to find out. But now it needs to be turned into reality. So everybody can help there.
Yeah, and I think the important thing there is like getting input from the worldwide community, because like there are certain things that people in Europe need to comply with GDPR in Europe, but that might be very different for organizations in Brazil, for example. And that might also be different for businesses in Japan or China or Russia or wherever. So the more context we have, the more we can keep ahead of like, okay, what are the legislations coming in? I mean, we do this research ourselves, but it's really helpful. Like you said, if you're working with a client and they say, oh, there's this issue with the privacy side of things that actually Mautic doesn't work so well with, and we do have to hack, and it's really annoying, and it would be great if it was in core. So as you mentioned, we do have a channel on Slack. So I will just pop a link up the top somewhere if I can.
The way you do that, also California, for instance, has regulations in data privacy. I think it's not just Germany. And different regions in the world have similar laws set up, protects data of users more and more. So it's not just to be compliant with European law. It's probably also different laws in different countries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and having that understanding is really helpful for us from a perspective of what do we actually need to keep track of. So I've popped at the top of the stream the link, the URL to join us on Slack, and the channel is WG, which means working group, and then Privacy Project. So that's where we're actually working on this. We're putting together a scope for a project that we're going to be doing over the next year or so. So definitely, if people are interested in knowing more about this, or you have views, like people have views about privacy. That's what I've learned, like talking to people about privacy. People can be quite strong in their views. We'd love to hear them, and we'd love to have involvement in reviewing the scope. But also when we get the project running, we're going to need to have people reviewing stuff and making sure it is doing what we want it to do and so forth. So yeah, absolutely. I would encourage people to think about joining that. So awesome. I mean, I'm really excited about the Privacy Project. I think it's really important that Mautic does differentiate itself in this area. There isn't really any other tool out there that does what we do in a privacy focused way. So I'm super excited to see this.
Yeah, I mean, when I did the research recently, a little research on the artificial intelligence research tool, Mautic came up as a good example. So that was very welcoming and confirming. Yeah.
Okay, so at the end of these sessions, I quite often end with quick fire questions where I ask my guests a couple of questions. So ready for it, Dirk?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So the first one is, what is your favorite feature of Mautic?
The favorite feature, I mean, besides campaigns, of course, it's the segmentation. I always say it's like, you can, if you have good data, you can really target very efficiently. This means the segmentation and what is it called? It's the combination of segments, for instance. Then you can really make useful information for people and not just broad send out mails. Segmentation.
Yeah. Awesome. And so what is one marketing automation trend you're excited about for the next year?
I mean, it's this change in the mindset to not try to get knowledge about your client from third party or from just guessing, but instead of asking them, let them participate in the marketing, let them give them control on what data they get from me, not just because I think it's the right data, but also because they say I only want that data. So it's that's the trend that I like most.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really exciting that people are also starting to feel empowered when it comes to their own data and understanding that they can decide to give data to get a better experience instead of just being overwhelmed with how many cookies do you want to accept, you know. Okay, so the last quickfire question. What open source project besides Mautic do you admire the most and why?
I mean, we are running a lot of open source tools in a system called Cloudrun that helps us to set it up and maintain it very easily. Of course, I mean, we're not talking about WordPress anymore. We run it, but this would be too easy. What I like in terms of complexity and which helps us in business context is an open source tool, Invoice Ninja, which we use to send out our invoices. They are compliant with the e-invoices, which are mandatory in Germany since the beginning of this year for B2B business. So this helped us a lot, and we connected it with other tools, and it's always fine to run it in terms of a digital sovereignty, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll pop the notes to these in the show notes so that people can follow up on them if they're interested in learning more. So that's great. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you again for taking the time to come and talk with us today about privacy and what that means for Mautic and where we're going. It's been super awesome hearing from your particular background, and also really appreciate your involvement in the project because it's been really instrumental in driving the community towards figuring out what we actually need to do to improve our privacy compliance. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you after this talk, Dirk?
Probably easiest is on LinkedIn with my name. Look for my name. I think there are not many other Dirk Spannaus. Or on our website, 20zen.com.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great having you here, and we will close then the stream and see everyone over on Zoom. So if you want to join us, head over to community.mautic.org, and at the bottom of the page or on the meetings tab, you will see the Privacy Project meeting. You can click on that and then you'll get the Zoom link to join us there. Okay, everyone, see you there. Bye.
Bye-bye.